Originally, I had written somewhat of a script for this video, but I decided to just take elements from it and just sort of wing it so that it's a little more raw and organic. Now, if you're a bass player, specifically a bass player who dabbles in the extended range territory, you've more than likely heard this old chestnut once or twice. Jaco only needed 4 strings. Now, there's been many videos about this subject, but I would like to touch on certain things that I haven't seen touched on. There's certain takes and opinions that I have that I just haven't really seen people talk about. And also I'd like to expand on the opinions that are already laid out. Now, for those who may not know, this tired cliche is referring to Jaco Pastorius, the legendary bass titan who played in Weather Report. He had some great solo work. He's played with Pat Metheny. He's played with pretty much everyone who's worth playing with back in his day. And Jaco Pastorius was an absolute master at his craft. And he had a very distinct style that when you heard it, you knew it was him. He played very well rhythmically, obviously he was a bass player, but he also played the melody lines as well as incorporated the use of harmonics very extensively. And this made for a very unique style that sounds like not quite like anyone else. This is very ironic to me because Jaco was so unconventional, yet the people who level this cliche at others of he only needed 4 strings, that's a very boxed in and conventional mindset to have. And it's usually brought about by, old heads, hipsters, and just average Joes that are in these butt rock cover bands. Now, I'm making generalizations, obviously. There's even accomplished bass players who are really good that say this, and it's quite a kind of a shame, really, because it's very close-minded and boring, to be honest. It's so cliche, and it's weird to me that these same guys who say this, their biggest influences are usually Jaco Pastorius, obviously, your Victor Wootens, your Geddy Lees, these kind of guys who all primarily played 4 strings. But they all also carved their own pathway and made, their own influence off of their instrument. They had very original ways of playing. And a lot of the people who say this don't. And I think it's sort of an inferiority, insecurity complex for sure, because they know that they'll never be as good as these guys. I'll never be as good as these guys. But that doesn't bother me because I'm more focused in honing my own craft and sharpening my own tools to make my own style. You know what I mean? Like, I love Stanley Clarke is the whole reason that I play bass. The reason I started playing bass way back in 2005. But I don't want to sound anything like him. Yes, I steal licks, I steal riffs like any musician does who's, smart. You have to. But I don't want to sound like any one guy. Flea is another one that people bring up all the time, and no one plays like Flea. Just because people slap and pop, that's not Flea. He also could calm down and play very subtle and very, just the root notes, just, very mellow. But you can still recognize his style and the style of these other guys, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that all these guys that these people say, oh, they only needed 4 strings, they also stand out among the crowd. And the people saying that they only need 4 strings more than often do not. So another thing that's very ironic to me is that the focus is always on the amount of strings Jaco played on, and not the other unique aspects of his bass playing. Oh, he only played 4 strings, or he only needed 4 strings. Well, he also only primarily played fretless. Not only did he, was he most known for that fretless bass sound, the Fender jazz bass, he made that bass fretless by ripping the frets out. So, by that same logic, do you only play fretless? Do you rip the frets out of your bass? Because he only needed 4 strings, so obviously you should do everything that Jaco did. If that's the standard that we're setting, if that's the litmus test that we're grading real bass players on, why don't these people only play fretless? or only need fretless, or only need Fender Jazz, or only need the fretless that they made fretless by ripping the frets out. So it's just dumb, like when you hone in on one thing. Now, another thing too, and I want to touch on the difference here between only need versus only played on, because this is a counter that four-string purists like to bring up. Oh, well, you know, I'm not saying he only played on four strings, but he only needed four strings. Because the reason that they bring this up is because you can do a quick Google search and find Jaco playing on a five string. So he experimented with extended range, as did Paul McCartney, as a matter of fact, Felix Pastorius, Jaco's son, who himself is a very accomplished bass player, he plays primarily five strings, if I'm not mistaken. Are you gonna tell the son of Jaco that his father only needed four strings? I'm sure that there's some assholes who have actually done this, but what have you done? Like, what have you done? So this only play versus only need to me is a very weak argument, because it basically cuts off at the knees the need for originality and the need for, expansion and the pushing the envelope, which Jaco very much did with the bass. I'm sure there was a lot of people who didn't like Jaco's style back when he was getting big, because it's too frenetic, it's too out in the open, it's too much. Okay, and nobody's talking about those people anymore. They're talking about Jaco, who pushed the envelope. The whole need versus played on thing to me is dumb, because he used what was the primary option back then. As a matter of fact, speaking of Fender basses, the whole reason that the four string is seen as the standard and real bass is because Leo Fender made the Fender Jazz bass as a companion to the electric, Fender, whatever it was, I think a Strat maybe, guitar of that time. It was just a electric bass version to keep up with that. But there's no reason why that needs to be the standard, just because Leo Fender, who, no disrespect to him, that's just what was needed at the time. That's what it called for at the time. And it just became the standard because Fender makes a very high-end product. And they're very popular. But look, I'm just going to say something controversial now. Any guitar that is in the bass register is a bass. I don't care how many strings it has. Now, me primarily, I play on a 6-string. I also have a 5-string Stingray, because that's what I want to play on. That's what I like for my style. That's what fits me. But yeah, I don't go above 6 strings, but I don't look at people with 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 4,000. I don't look at them as less of bass players. I look at them as, well, they're using that for what they do. So who cares? Why does that affect me at all? It doesn't. And another point I want to bring up, and of course there's exceptions to every rule here, but most extended range players that I know, including myself, we don't look down on 4-string players. Oh, you can only handle 4 strings. You would get lost on this fretboard. You can't even handle. We don't look down on 4-string players because primarily we know how it feels to be looked down upon. And I just want to make it clear right now that I'm not saying that everyone who plays 4-string basses has this mindset. Some of my best friends are 4-string bass players. But every 4-string purist either only plays 4-string bass, or or they play other instruments, so I don't even know why they're talking about the bass, to be honest, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. Or I've even heard people who aren't even musicians say this. Oh, Jaco only needed 4. Okay, thanks for your non-musical opinion, I guess. I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, use what's best for you. Don't let people bully you, or it's really more of an annoyance now, because it's like, why are we still even talking about this? But to me, it's just silly. So, I'm just going to wrap it up right here, because I'm going on 10 minutes now. If you're an extended range player, or even if you just like extended range and you have a 4-string as well, it's just something you enjoy, don't let these 4-string purists tear you down. The next time they come at you talking about Jaco, just say something like, you're not Jaco either, I'm not Jaco. You know, no one will ever be Jaco. Be yourself. Or, you know, if you're in a bad mood, you could say something like, you know, just stick to Smoke on the Water and go kick rocks. Like, leave me alone. Who cares? But just do you at the end of the day. Just be you, and just don't let it bother you, because it mostly stems from insecurity and just, you know, not really thinking outside of the box. So anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Peace out.